What's up, Pod Pals? It's your buddy Adam, and you are listening to Podcasting Business School. This is a show where I teach you how to love your podcast like a hobby, but build it like a business. And today, we're talking side hustling, one of my favorite topics. I'm bringing two side hustling experts, Craig Clickner and Carrie Bohlig from the Tandem Talks podcast. We're going to drop some knowledge on you here today. Craig, Carrie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, man.
Thank you.
It's a blast, and we love your podcasting voice and setup. You've got it down, so we're excited to learn a few things ourselves.
Well, after 600 plus episodes of 3 shows, I better darn well have it down. Or I've wasted a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I want to dive into side hustling, but first I want to talk about your entry into the podcasting space. As I mentioned earlier, like I have podcasters on this show to teach different methods, but from a podcaster perspective. So what made you guys decide like, hey, podcasting is something that I think we need to be, investing a little bit of time into?
Gosh, there's probably about a dozen reasons for that. But I think the biggest thing is we met some people. Salescast has kind of helped us, manage to our audience and really got us going and energized around podcasting. When they started talking about all the benefits, it's like, hey, we really need to seriously add this. But with the book coming out, and we normally do a ton of public speaking. We probably speak to 15, 20,000 people a year. And when COVID hit, it was like, oh, where is everybody? Right. So it's like, we didn't have that audience. We didn't have that mic. And so it just made sense to get ourselves out there and do that and not hold back, because we've got all these ideas. We have great conversations with people. It's like, dude, let's just throw up a camera. Like, let's not make it epic, and then just carry the conversation live. And if other people get value from that, that's wonderful. And I think it also goes as a way to complement like other things that you're doing. I've talked to other people, but in our case, like our book, it's like we can go deeper on a particular topic, or we can bring in an expert on one specific niche when it comes to side hustling. Yep. And we can go super deep and just expand and bring more value for our audience, nation or worldwide, essentially. So anything you want to tap onto that?
And
Claire?
actually, we met the Salescast crew from Colin interviewing me on his show, and we just really hit it off and developed a neat partnership from there. And another element is like, I have a deep belief of broadcast what you believe in so the right people can find you. And podcasting is a phenomenal way to put a subwoofer on your message and really broadcast your values, the people that you respect and love and are learning from. I love that we're able to shine a light on really, really good people that have strong expertise. Some of them don't have a huge social media following, but they still have a ton to say. Yep. And so being able to hand select those people and showcase them has just been super cool and really rewarding. And again, a lot of creative liberty, which we like. And so many people have blogs and whatnot. So like, fast forward, get a podcast and really be able to run your own show.
Yeah. I love the medium just because I can be in somebody's earbuds when they're doing the dishes, when they're working out, when they're driving their kids to school. And that's not something I can do on YouTube. Like, we're blasting this on YouTube now, but I have to sit down and watch YouTube. I can listen to this at 1.5 speed. Although people tell me that I speak too fast sometimes. It's already like 1.5 speed. Sorry. But it's so efficient, and you can consume so much information and learn quickly. And the other interesting thing about what you just said, I know so many newer podcasters that started during the pandemic. Like, it's like the poddemic. Like, people are like, I can't go out and speak anymore. I can't travel. Let's start a podcast. I've been thinking about it. I've been procrastinating. Now's the time. Let's do it. So I think the next level of that question is like, all right, you've been used to speaking to thousands of people a year. You've got that down, that process is down. You've got that in your arsenal. But now you've got the podcast also. Now that the world is opening back up, how do you see that kind of converging together? And now we can like combine forces. Like, how are you going to, use your stage opportunities to grow your show and vice versa, talking about your stage opportunities on your show to get people in the seats for that? Like, how do you see the two parts of your brand kind of meshing together now?
Well, it's just like anything in today's world. It's hard to give up any platform, right? Because we're on LinkedIn a lot, but we're not really on Twitter. So I got a Twitter account, but then I don't use it. Well, then that's a whole audience that we're losing, right? Yeah. And so if we go to give a public speech in an auditorium or something small, or last night we were on Zoom for 100 people or so, it's like, that's one specific niche. And if you're podcasting, it's going to catch a different niche. And if people like you on one, they might find or follow you in the other. So they're really symbiotic.
I was going to say they're very, very symbiotic.
So there isn't any reason to not be doing both. In our case, one thing that helped us get going was paying for it. Right. So this is kind of an interesting thing. It's like a lot of people, the reason their side hustle doesn't win is because they always treat it like a side hustle.
Yeah.
Right. And so when we started paying SalesCast money to like do this, it's like, oh man, we better show up. We better do this. And then we raise our level of like commitment to it. So, and in fact, we really need to go up another notch, but we've been so busy with the book and stuff. Now that that's a little behind us, we'll start to put some more attention to the podcasting game. It's going to be a ton of fun actually, but I love this. Like, this is fun. Like having good conversations with sharp people. And like, if somebody gets value from that, like freaking awesome. So specifically to your question, I think they play off of each other. There's no reason that like, it's not like one takes away from the other per se. Right.
Yeah. And I will say the whole podcastination concept,
Beautiful.
One thing with our book and our podcast that we did before we even started either of them, we started telling people, we're going to start a like we started speaking it into the universe. And it sounds so simple, but it's so overlooked. A lot of times people hide their dreams or aspirations or goals in the closet because they don't want to be on the hook. They don't want to be held accountable. Therefore, they never actually take the step forward and do it. And we like purposefully really put ourselves on the hook in a fairly vulnerable way long before we were like truly ready. And you're never going to really feel ready. So you have to be willing to take a step anyways and find people that can help hold you accountable, whether it's getting more skin in the game with some investment or, maybe it's somebody you're running parallel to that's also starting a podcast and you create a little bit of an accountability system or a timeline with them, but figure out what gets your butt moving and set it up so that you actually make things happen.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly. And it's kind of like my tagline for this show: love your show like a hobby, but build it like a business. I feel like that fits the side hustle category as well. And you have to, like Craig said, you have to treat it like a business. Like it can be a passion point. It can start as a hobby. That's where the spark, like you're interested in this, but then eventually you got to go into a business mindset and business mode and go, okay, I have to give this the respect that a business is due. If I actually want to grow it, not just sit and complain and go, no one's buying my stuff. Like that's easy to do, or no one's listening to my show. So let's talk about that a little bit from a side hustle perspective. Let's maybe just start with your side hustle and origin story. Like, how did that whole concept come about for you guys?
Yeah, let me just take a quick sidestep though, because you're bringing up an important point. Don't let that it has to be this big epic thing stop you from starting. That's kind of our point with the side hustle. It's like freaking get going, move, like take a step. It's not like you're jumping with the side hustle. It's not like you're jumping into the ocean in the middle and now you got to figure out how to swim. It's like you're walking on the beach.
Put your toe in the water.
Yeah, put your toe in the water. And so for us, it wasn't like we launched this podcast and it was like this big, huge thing. It's like, I guess we got to shoot this and like we better invite somebody. And then like we just got a couple going and like we're the type of people that we're not going to quit. So we know we'll just get better and over time we'll change our cadence or whatever we're going to do. So don't let but yes, to your point though, once you're in the game now, if you want to make money, if you want to do certain things, yes, you have to elevate. And I think that's where people get stuck at either point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like not starting because they're trying to make too big of a deal or they get going, but then they don't know how to elevate. So, so thank you. So back to the origins, briefly, I studied finance and econ. I got the good job out of school with Deutsche Bank. I worked for G Capital. I was a risk analyst. I did the real corporate stuff, right? And I just realized early on that like, no matter how hard I scaled in that space, I wasn't going to be able to create a life I was really excited about living. Right. And so we feel like if you get one crack at life, like, don't you want it to be like adventurous and exciting and like fun? And so hence side hustling. I didn't have a lot of capital. I didn't have a lot of expertise. I didn't come from an entrepreneurial family. This is like early mid 2000s. So like podcasting wasn't cool. Facebook was face mash or whatever it was. Right. So I did like a little real estate, a little in the stock market. I enrolled in MBA school, but I ran out of capital. Right. Like how many people do talk? Oh, I'm going to do real estate. Like, awesome. When are you buying your third property? Not the first one, like the third, because then you're really scaling. Yeah. So I was frustrated. We ran into some entrepreneurs who built online communities, drove revenue using like affiliate marketing. They used some direct sales. They some different systems that they had used to create like really significant multi-millions and stabilized revenue. I was like, I want to live that way. And so when we started focusing more on the who, that actually like pulled us through. And a lot of people are really focused on what. I think what's cool about podcasting is it allows you to focus on who you want to be around, who you want to learn from. And that impacts us. That totally changed our life. Through that, I actually met Carrie Bohlig. Over to you, honey.
A side hustle love story.
Yeah, literally. We'll spare you the love story.
Yeah, we won't go into depth, but it's fun because we have very different backgrounds. I actually studied women's studies and sociology, so I have 2 liberal studies degrees. Did well in school. I wasn't like a standout, but graduated, got a job in teaching, and it was just this idea of like, okay, here I am. I'm an adult now. I put all my eggs in one basket. Now I'm in a teaching track, and just like looking at my actual vision and my actual passions, there was like no crossover with the life that being a teacher was really going to provide. So we call it the fulfillment gap. And I think a lot of people experience that dreaded moment where you have that wake up call and you're like, crap, I thought I've done everything right and done fairly well with it, but there's still this divide. And so that's where I just became a lot more open-minded. I had never considered business. I mean, I'd never even heard of a side hustle concept. And so it was more just like, again, finding people who I respected and wanted to emulate and finding out how they did it and really working to duplicate some of those efforts. So again, that's where we met. And for me, it was more of like a compounded effort type thing, like very part-time. I wasn't going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg. Didn't want to, nor did I have the skills or expertise or capital. So it was more like, how do I harness this concept like moderate entrepreneurship? But how do I take it seriously? And not just make it like this hobby I put on the shelf and off the shelf when I feel like it, but actually treat it like a real business, even though it was a part-time business. And that's where a lot of people get real tripped up.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so we scaled that to about $1 million in revenue, our first side hustle. Carrie stepped away from corporate. That led to some coaching and teaching. We scaled those. And then I was able to step away several years ago now, actually.
Yeah.
And from commercial banking. And, I was the last 2 years in the corporate world, we were banking like 110% of my salary. And I had like a nice salary. So we were like cash flush. Right. And so everybody's like, oh, you have to have this original idea. You have to go all in. It's like, you don't need an original idea. You don't need to be passionate. And you don't have to go all in. Like those are misnomers. You can, but you don't have to. And so that's really one of the biggest messages that we want to share with people is like just get going, like do something and then get around the right people. I mean, I'm more excited about podcasting after 10 minutes on your show than I was before. Like it's fact, right? Okay.
Yes.
Another conversion for you.
Preach. So I want to go through like the different stages of the side hustle. I think in process form, like that's how my brain works. So I think we're starting one, we are in transition mode, and then we transition out of 9 to 5 into this is what I do.
Right.
Because I know there's a lot of podcasters listening in now, and kind of like to what Carrie was saying, they're missing that sense of purpose and that passion of like, I'm making a difference. Their job is a job, but they feel like they have something to say and they need people to hear it, and they want to feel being heard. So let's walk them through kind of that side hustle timeline. So they are getting started with a side hustle. What are some key benchmarks or points that like, okay, we need to check off these check boxes to make sure that we're starting correctly?
Yep. Beautiful. So the first thing that we recommend people do is to know what your goal is. Where the heck are you going? Like we talk about a lot of people, there's an epidemic of people starting side hustles and podcasts for that matter, right?
Yeah.
But our thought process, how do we help you finish the podcast? How do we help you finish the business, not start it? And if you haven't defined what finishing looks like, you cannot finish. And so most people are kind of aimlessly walking through life like, oh, I want another job, or people will say, well, how did you step away from corporate and, become a millionaire in your 30s or whatever? And it's like intentionally, like flipping intentionally, right? So the first thing you got to do is like define like, what does a win look like? Why are you side hustling? Why do you want to start this podcast? Or if you've started, like, what are you really trying to do? Do you want to just make a little extra money because you love your career? Or do you have a young family and like you really want to make enough that you can then replace your job income? So you're trying to figure out how you're going to monetize X amount. Or do you want to be the next, I don't know, superstar on podcasting? So the next Joe Rogan or whatever, the big names in the industry. So you got to figure that out. And then when you know that target, now we usually recommend finding who's already done it, right? Or who's already on the way, and then like dialing in with them and building yourself a community around that. So that's foundationally right. And then the other thing we talk about is there's all this hubbub about mindset, which is super because it's like critical. But the thing that we talk about is what we call life set. And so if mindset is your way of thinking, then life set is your way of living and how you're applying the thinking. But a lot of people's life set is so screwed up, meaning their job is screwed up, relationships, health. It's hard to then have your job and then build something significant on the side of that. And so what happens is you start and you stop and you start and you stop, because the first thing, you alluded to this earlier, the first thing that goes on the back burner when you have a life situation is your side hustle.
Or your podcast, right?
AKA podcast in this scenario, right? It's not your job. Like you're not like, oh, I guess I won't go to work next week. No, you're like, I guess I can't do that podcast thing, right? Oh, well. And so if your life set is really screwed up, then it's going to be hard to build a strong foundation on top of that. And there's certain things you can do, but I mean, that we go into that in the book, but finances and relationships and just like doing certain things that give you a good foundation. And sometimes we need an example of a good life set so we know, and that proves and helps us understand the mindset, right? Because if you're just reading it out of a book, it's like, okay, but how do I apply that? So that was kind of a long riff for me. So because we're just at the beginning now, right? So it's like, okay, that's phase 0.5, go to 0.75 care or 0.1.
Yeah. Well, and I think for any side hustler, whether you're in the podcast sector or any industry, it's like knowing that you're going to do a ton of work without monetizing to an extreme scale out of the gates, and knowing that like if you're actually building a real business, it's going to take time. You're going to feel underpaid initially. It's going to feel very inconvenient, right? Because what is your podcasting time in competition with? It's in competition with your Netflix time, your happy hour time with your buddies, the football game, all of the sort of like entertainment fun things. You have to be disciplined and willing to carve out some time and take the podcasting thing seriously. And there's this element of doubt and disbelief that no matter where you are in life or what industry you're going to go through. And I can even say with the podcast, like we were really excited. We got our signage up. It's like vintage barnwood. And we're like, we're legit now. We've got sales cast. Like we've got a couple, guests lined up. And then it's like, oh crap, this is actually kind of like, we got to keep finding guests and we got to make sure that they're really high caliber and that we feel really good about broadcasting their message and, keeping the pipeline fresh. It's all these, we can say this about our initial side hustle or even, now some real estate we're doing, but it's like always fun and exciting in theory. And then you roll your sleeves up and you get your
the honeymoon phase ends. Yeah.
The honeymoon phase ends. And I think that's a question people need to really ask themselves and be very candid around is like, okay, month 1 might be fun. What happens month 5 or 6, even if I am passionate, but I have these bouts of disbelief or it just gets a little harder or a little more grueling. Like, do I have the endurance and fortitude to push through? And do I have the right who or the right association? Like, am I hanging out with other cool podcasters who are energizing and have fresh ideas and can give me maybe a boost if I need it? Even though, as an entrepreneur, hopefully you're your own best hype person, but nonetheless, that association can be so powerful. So how are you actually setting yourself up for success, not in the first 90 days, but like the first year, 2 years, 5 years?
Yeah. And having realistic expectations. Like I like thinking in filters, and one of the filters I like, Tim Ferriss always says, like, what would this look like if it was easy? That's a good filter to have, but we also need to flip the coin. There's a book that I read called The Road Less Stupid by the author. I can't remember his name, but he's like, you guys have probably heard of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah.
This guy is his rich dad, Craig something from Texas. Anyway, great book, great book. The Road Less Stupid. He says, what's the upside? What's the downside? Can I live with the downside? Like, so Beautiful. If the downside is you're going to have to sacrifice, reading a bedtime story to your kid every night because you got to be doing podcasts during that time, is the downside worth it? Yes or no? Right. For a period of time, or sacrifice the Saturday football game with the boys or beers after work or whatever. Can you live with that downside how serious are you about this? Are you willing to treat it with the respect that it deserves? So thinking through those filters, like you guys have presented there, like that's really, really, really important just to know like the serious level that we're willing to play at. So let's look at that next little stage too.
Let me add one more thing on that I think has been helpful for us. We didn't expect to be good at it. And we didn't expect to get it. Like we haven't even put in real effort yet. I mean, we've just got it going to get a cadence and a rhythm and a feel and develop some skills. It's like once you have the skills and you know the game, then you go to the next level and you're like, okay, we're going to blow this up. We really like it. We're going to like make this a big deal. Right. But we like our podcast is just like, let's just do it, but we're not like, some people do 2 episodes like, oh, I didn't like, you're not getting the results or any business. And they're all freaked out. It's like, dude, you don't know what you're doing. You just started. Like, how can you expect to be successful?
Exactly.
Like, the success is in the experience and the learning. And if we define it that way, then it's like that creates momentum for us versus like so many people who haven't started a podcast. It's because they're still trying to do it perfectly. Right.
Yeah. Perfect is the enemy of getting it done, getting it started.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thanks for letting me interrupt, Adam. I appreciate
No. I just want to take a peek at that next part of the timeline because I feel like that's where we're at now. We've started. We've initiated momentum. The ship has launched. Now we know, and we're dangerous enough to kind of know what we're doing, but we could also still royally screw it up if we choose to. But like we're off and running. And we set that goal. I think I might want to make this replace my income someday. I hear a lot of podcasters. They're like a year into it. They've got like a coaching service or they've got a course or something. And they're like, how do I make this my thing? How do I turn this from side hustle into full hustle? Like when I talk to podcasters, one of my main little pro tips, I go, hey, if we're going to really do this, I want you to have some sort of like membership or recurring revenue model. If I'm giving you advice, I'm like, I don't want you to quit your job and go, okay, now I know I have to sell 12 courses a month. Like I want you to have, I've got 50 members that are bringing in X amount of dollars per month. That's going to replace your income. Build it up that way, not hope that you can sell enough stuff to replace your income month after month. So like little things like that. Like again, the checklist, okay, we're ready to bridge that gap and go full time. What does the checklist look like for you guys?
Well, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this. I know you're asking me, but maybe we could even almost weigh in on top of what you're going to say, because you've been doing this specific thing with podcasting longer. And we know the game really well, broadband. And especially as a former commercial banker, like I've seen all the guts of like all kinds of businesses, but I did not commercially bank any podcasts. And we built several businesses, and whatnot. But could you give us your top, if you don't mind, give us your top couple tips, and then we'll throw on top. Like,
I think that I love talking. That's why I'm in podcasting.
Right. And I think that this will be more beneficial for the leader than us giving you some random stuff. So give us your top 3, like real quick, and then we'll pontificate on top of that.
Yeah. Well, when I just think like security in a business and in the online space, again, that number one is like, I want your income to already be replaced through recurring revenue streams.
Which is exactly what we did.
Mm-hmm.
Critical. Like, I don't want hope. Yeah. We're not paying the mortgage with hope next month.
Right.
Like, and it's tough because so many people are like, I hate my job now. Once they discover the passion in their side hustle, they're like, that could be the thing. That could be the real, I could be a digital nomad. I could, not wear pants for a week or whatever they want to do. Like, they're like, wow, like this could be the thing. So a lot of them just skip and they hope that they can figure it out. Don't do that. Don't do that, pod pals. I like the idea of having a high ticket item also, to where like maybe you do a 5 or 10K offer and you hit those are home run swings. You're getting connected to people and you're able to go, wow, that just replaced 2 months of income. Now I'm ahead in addition to my recurring revenue stream. But then I think the third key thing is community connectedness and engagement. Like you have some sort of a model where you are talking to your ideal audience members, listeners, potential clients on a very regular basis, that you're always evolving according to what they tell you that they want. That I feel like is a nice security blanket for somebody that wants to go from side hustle to full time. And if you keep doing those 3 things, we're going to blow it up. So that's what I've got, Coach.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you want to add on that, Carrie?
Yeah, I think one really important question we had to ask ourselves in that transition is like, what do we want our lifestyle to look like when we convert? And for me, to be totally real, like I didn't want our lifestyle to go down. So we had to make sure that our income streams were very, very strong and secure, and that we had good savings so that we could actually amplify our lifestyle as a function of like making that conversion. And some people just have a lower threshold, which is awesome. Like Craig, when he was single, he's like, I could live in a box as long as I don't have to work a job. And then we got married and he's like, yeah, I guess that I need to up my standard here.
Double wide.
Yeah.
Crawling in.
But I think it often comes back to that life vision. It's like, does the transition and the timeline you want to convert actually line up with like the life that you want to live, and just really making sure you're in synergy with that. And then finding people like yourself, Adam, who, you're coaching a number of people, like actually getting a blessing from someone who's done it and can see the helicopter view. They have the bleacher view of like your goals and where your business is at, your podcast is at, and they can help you dodge some like minefields, right?
Yeah.
It's a big decision. So being thoughtful about it is a top tip.
I couldn't agree more. Very important.
So one guy that I like to pick, and I recommend people check him out, is Mr. Money Mustache.
Man.
Yeah, I know he is. And it's really interesting how little you can live on, especially if you don't have kids and a family. But even if you do, like so many of the things in your life, if you can cut down your life costs, then you can more easily acquire your freedom, your financial emancipation, which I think, like, when we wake up now, like we write a book, we have a nonprofit, we do what we freaking love. And it is like such a blessing. But I mean, we don't live like paupers. We've got nice stuff now, but like in my 20s, I did, because I also wanted to bank that income.
Yeah. And
like banking all that income gives us extra security down the road. So as much as you might not love your job, like use it as a tool, just like a business is a tool to like create the life you want, right? Because if you have enough money, like you don't even need to podcast. Like some people are like, oh, I'm really passionate about software. No, you're not. You just got into it and you got involved and your head's all sucked up in it and you think you can make money in it, right? Even podcasting could be that way for some people, but like it probably less, right? But it's just like, if you can keep your life costs low and make good, smart decisions, bank your money, then and whittle down as low as possible, man, you can live and step away so much easier. So that's one step. The second thing that I have an issue with, I think Carrie does too, and I'm okay with people releasing courses and content and whatever, but man, I hope you actually have a real expertise. It's like someone says they're a life coach, and I'm like, dude, what qualifies you to be a life coach? Like, dang, like you gotta really be, and I get like I'm not saying that you can't be someone can't be a life coach. You have to be perfect. That's not what I'm saying. In a lot of ways, that's what we are. I just don't like the term, but like you've done 600 podcasts, you said?
Yep. Okay.
So like you have something to say on that topic, right? And I don't know how much money you make and how, I'm sure you do fine, but like you have an expertise, man. But like you release 10 or 12 or 30 podcasts and then you want to write a book about it. And it's like, I don't know if that's like really legit. And then you're upset because you don't now have revenue from that. It's like, nah, man, you got to build like a real business, build a real expertise. So if like your job is you're an engineer, well, maybe figure out how to do engineering consulting, or, figure out how to do real estate. Just do something so that like when you are going to release a course, like there's actual real value in it. Otherwise you shouldn't really be teaching. And we have an issue with that.
Yeah. That is a problem in like the age of podcasting, Clubhouse. You see that a lot too. A lot of people are like, I am a thing that I've been doing for 5 times, and now I'm gonna host this. But Craig, dude, I'm pumped that you brought up Mr. Money Mustache. I am deep into the FIRE community. I'm 80% FI myself right now. I'm like kind of coasting to the FI zone. I love my favorite podcast, Choose FI. Like I nerd out on all that stuff. I love it.
Well, and we can sidebar some nerd out conversations.
Oh yeah. I drive a 2013 Nissan Leaf, bro. Like I am the same car. When Mr. Money Mustache mentioned it, wrote that article, I'm like, this is my car. Sold my truck. Right. Boom. But people don't realize when they're trying to replace their income, the monthly expense is a big part of the equation. If you're living La Vida Loca and you're spending, $12K a month on vacations and whatever, and like, if you can whittle that down, like you said, and get it down to half that or whatever, like that's less income you have to replace and you can get there quicker. So the food cost, the housing cost, the car cost. What can you do in the big three to get, if you really want to go after it and you go, wow, I can, take my monthly expense down by 50%. Now you're 50% closer to jumping from a side hustle to a full-time gig. So that's a very important thing. And I could very easily go off on this. So I'll press my own personal pause button right there.
Well, let me not allow you to do that quite yet, because this is a very, very hot topic for me. And we were fortunate. Big part of the LifeSet chapter that we have is about like financial management, but there's a couple different parts. So there's number one, don't spend more money than you make. Like that's like baseline, right? Yeah. So there's like poverty, like you don't have any money, you don't have any debt, you don't have any money. That's like lowest level necessarily. Then there's the debt because you're spending more. So there's getting to like that middle class, upper middle class like mindset, right? Of like save. But then there's a level beyond that of investing, right? And so like right now we're helping launch a tech company, and like we've invested a lot of hours. I haven't invested money, but we've invested a lot of hours. I don't have $1 back for it, right? But it's like if that stock or that percentage ownership is worth a few million, in a year or two, then it's like that's worth it. But like my dad, the average middle class, like engineering type background is like, well, you got to get paid. Like, why aren't they not paying you anything? Like you're putting in all that time. It's like, so there's a couple different levels, but the main thing that you're saying, which is actually Booklist, which does good like book reviews critically, they said that our curriculum on buying a car, not buying an expensive car, should be in every high school curriculum. And it's like, why aren't we teaching people that? I mean, I met a kid the other day about a $40,000 car and a $50,000 salary. And I'm just like, return it, dude. Return it. Just return it, man. Just go and tell them you effed up. Like, get into it.
That's so intense.
So yeah, it sounds like we could go too deep on that. So I'll pause my own self.
Well, and now. I'll just add one thing. Let me just chime in. The women's studies sociology background.
There we go.
I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot from actually building a business on how to manage my personal finances and my personal economy. So I'm guessing a lot of people, your audience, are not like born and bred entrepreneurs. They're learning, they've got a learning curve, but making sure you're studying these principles, applying them into your life. And if you actually want to make the conversion to not have to work a job and be a full-time podcaster, a full-time human being, understand there is opportunity cost on every single dollar that you spend. Mm-hmm. And really be clear on your values, because we had to do a lot of unconventional, weird things like make really good income, but have older used cars. And like, we weren't sweating that. We didn't care. Our peers might've been like, what the heck? I thought they were successful. And we're like, that's not the biggest value I have. The biggest value is getting Craig, out of his job so he can be a full-time dad, an entrepreneur, and like staying in your lane and not worrying about what everybody else is doing, because social media and that it'll mess people up and make you get really, really confused on what's actually most important to you, and really drill into that.
Yeah. I'm that guy. I'm that financial independence guy. Like recently, one of my good pod pals, in fact, posted that she had just bought a brand new car, like Mercedes, and she's like, what should I name it? And people were like Black Beauty and the Jet and whatever. And there's like 80 comments. And my comment is the Roth IRA. And she knew what I was. I'm like, you missed an opportunity. The guy that rolled, the 6'3", 220-pound guy that rolls around in a Nissan Leaf, like I charge it for free at my local park, so I don't have to, even pay for the electricity. And I'm that guy. I'm that guy. Oh man, I had Jonathan Mendonça on the show from Choose FI, and the stat that blew people's minds was when he said, if you can save $100 a month off of a bill, that lowers your financial independence number by $30,000 every time you do that. And people were like, if you can just quit spending $200 a month on cable and cut it to $100, you just save $30,000 off your destination to reach independence. So anyway,
or in our case, don't own a television or cable for a decade.
Yeah.
Wait till you build $1 million business and then buy a bunch of them in a lake house. You know what I mean? Like that's what we like. I didn't watch TV. I didn't own a TV for like 10 years. Everybody would be angry. All our relatives. Like,
oh no.
Where's your TV? Like how are we going to watch the game?
The
like
basketball game.
We don't know. Like, I don't know.
Packers.
I'm trying to build a company and acquire financial independence here. Like
exactly. Well, we got to talk about your book. All right. Like I want to talk about, obviously the topic, but also the launching of the book? Because I'm always interested when people are promoting a new book launch and things like that. What kind of strategies you're implementing? Because there's a lot of people that want to be authors or that, put out a book and it didn't go so hot. So let's talk the premise of the book, who it's for, but also then let's talk about the launch strategy a little bit as well.
Logistics.
Yeah.
Sure. You want to kick that off on?
Yeah. I mean, the premise of the book from my side, the whole idea was like, there's a ton of moderate entrepreneurs out there. There's very little content specifically curated for the side hustler in mind. And there's some great books out there, but they're a lot more about the what. They're a lot more idea books, which is cool. But we wanted to give something a little bit more foundational and holistic on how do we actually help someone elevate and build a side hustle into something of more significance versus just this like side job or something that creates short-lived commissions. So again, we talk a lot about life vision, your values, identifying the who, even really identifying the what that you should be, investing in.
How to appraise the right side hustle, because most people are experts and conditioned to appraise product, not business systems, right? So they go, oh, the product's great. But like, how are you going to scale that and like sell it? I totally cut you off. Sorry. Go ahead, honey.
Yeah. I mean, no, those are like the initial foundational things. And then tactical things like how to actually find business partners and evaluate business partnerships, how to actually fund your business, how to brand yourself and brand your business, how to make decisions. And that was actually a really fun chapter to write because we feel like entrepreneurship is just like one decision after another, one problem after another that you have to solve and make decisions along the way. And that most people aren't trained to do that well.
Yeah.
And especially if you're a solopreneur, I mean, I'm sure people have peripheral help. I hope you have a mentor and a coach, but like a lot of those decisions really fall back on the owner, and rightly so, but really trying to groom and prime people for some pitfalls and ways that they're going to need to level up to actually be successful. And to Craig's point, finish a side hustle,
yes,
reach the end game, the destination, and live out one's values, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So who is like the ideal person? If you could describe an avatar of the person that needs to read this book, what do they look like? What are their pain points?
The avatars that are branding expert.
Will and Mallory
are their names.
Will and Mallory.
They're 27 years old, engineer. She works in PR, something like that. No, we actually built like real avatars, right?
Nice.
So the person that we want to speak to is you're in the cube, you're in the office, right? You've been in the job and you're feeling, here's what we believe. Your job doesn't allow you to leverage all your strengths. It's just the nature of a job. Like it's boxed, right? And so most people are not the hardcore Elon Musks of the world. And most people do not want to sit in a cube forever. Most of us are ambiverts of entrepreneurship is the way I put it, right? Like we're in between. And so the book is for you if you're like, hey, I want to build something or I've got something going, but I'm just not sure how to do it in a really life impactful way, right? That's who the book is for. So
perfect.
Will and Mallory, if you're out there, you should definitely buy our book because you're our avatars. But anyone else who's in that situation, I think it would be good for. Now, who it's not for is someone who's like, I just want a bunch of ideas. Like, how am I going to do this? Our book doesn't give a lot of ideas. We teach people how to evaluate ideas, but we don't give you a million ideas. Get us, the Gillibrew, Chris Gillibrew. There's other books on ideas that are awesome. That's not our jam. So thanks for asking that though. Appreciate it.
Well, I think this is a resource, and being in the entrepreneurial space for now 20 plus years, honestly, I'm unemployable. Like I've been let's just really cut to the chase. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 6 years old, selling homemade like birthday cards in my neighborhood, door to door.
Yeah. So you're on that, a little more of that end of the spectrum, right? Like it's just like in your soul, right?
Yeah. But there's no like, even if you like, there's a college in Indiana that has like an entrepreneurship degree. But even if you do that, the speed of entrepreneurship moves at the speed of light, at the speed of social media, at the speed of word to mouth conversations and referrals.
Yeah.
So that's going to be outdated by the time it goes to a college curriculum. So having something like this as a resource, it's super important. Like one of my favorite resources is the book Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, where
Mhm.
like I wasn't really sure, like, how much do I need to save for taxes? How much do I pay myself? How much is okay? And he gave me the numbers, and then I interviewed him on the show, which is super cool.
That's
And
awesome.
it was just like, okay, now I have this resource. I've been using that system for the last like 7 years, and it's never failed me. So having this type of resource, this curriculum, this sort of system that you're putting together, especially for the people that have been in the corporate world, that have been the 9-to-5 world, have
Right.
never experienced true entrepreneurship as a solopreneur out there in the woods by themselves, this is important. You know, I want all those solopreneurs or potential solopreneurs to have your ears perk up and really think about this book. Now, I don't think we've mentioned the title of the book. What the heck is the title of the book? We got to shout that out.
So you want to start a side hustle.
So you want to start a side hustle. If you guys are watching on social or on YouTube, tandemconsulting.co, tandemconsulting.co. It's at the bottom of the screen there. Make sure you guys check it out. But what about book launch strategies? I want to talk about that real quick. So you're trying to get as many books out there as possible. How are you guys going to do that?
Yeah, you know, I don't know that we've been the best at this, to be like super transparent. We're so busy writing the book, and we have our other businesses. And I think for us, we don't need the book to sell to like live our life. Like we just don't. Like if the book does great, awesome. You know, we've gotten on WGN Chicago. We'll be on WPR, which is, you know, NPR's subsidiary at the end of the month. In Wisconsin. And then, you know, we've had some CNBC's request. So we're getting some publicity, which is great. We got a PR firm, which a lot of people said do, and a lot of people said don't do. Here's what we did. We got a decent advance from McGraw-Hill. And we've taken all that money and pumped it back. Like we reinvested it all of it, right? Tens of thousands of dollars. And we just said, nope. So
I don't think we've done a terrible job.
Yeah,
I feel like we did some smart things.
Yeah.
We've also,
this is therapy for me. I'm like talking it out as we go. It's a good question. What I'm saying is we're not experts on this, right?
Yeah.
It's our first book. So we've kind of learned as we've went. We've done a lot of podcasts, just to have good conversations and talk about our beliefs and our values. Because again, if that resonates with someone, the book's likely going to be a really good fit. If they're like, man, those two are chumps, like probably not a good read for your summer list, right?
Yeah. Take it off.
Even starting our own podcast, it's been a neat way to like talk about a lot of the themes and talk about entrepreneurs who started as side hustlers. And actually, it's been fun because a lot of the business owners that we know that are successful, when we get deeper into their stories, they actually were side hustlers to begin with. So like amplifying those stories has been really powerful. I do a ton of networking. I do a ton of content creation on LinkedIn. We do some on Instagram. I'm part of neat networking groups with like very high powered female entrepreneurs, and just getting into their inner circles and like getting a lot of inside scoop from authors who are also entrepreneurs and how they did things. So I'd say that's some of the groundwork that I did, as well as like the PR stuff. And
I'm in my basement building spreadsheets for the financial analysis, right?
It takes both.
I think one thing that I would recommend to people, if you're looking to to be an author, this is maybe where we could give some real advice, because this was hard. Like writing a book was hard. It was probably one of the hardest things we've ever done. I mean, there were times when like we did not cry, but we were really close. Right? Internally, we were like crying. We were like wimpy puppy dogs, right? We were blessed to get a literary agent. And literary agents are amazing, because when you have a literary agent, and Michelle from 3C's Literacy, she just did an awesome job. And if you get a literary agent, that changes the game big time. And then if you're going to pick a publisher, pick one that you feel like you align with from an ideals perspective and you actually like the editor. And then the other thing is get a developmental editor. You can do this on your own. And we were like, ghostwriting, that is stupid. Like, why would anyone ever ghostwrite? Like, there's no integrity behind that. Just write your own stupid book, right? Well, that's fine. But if you've never written a book before, like get yourself some support. Like a developmental editor can help that. And then they'll help you structure it and like make it smart. So then when you get into the deep editing, it's not a total clusterfuck like it was for us.
Yes.
So,
And for the record, we have nothing against ghostwriting. In fact, during the process, we were like, man, I wish we had a ghostwriter right about now.
That doesn't mean they like steal your work. Like you work with them in a lot of ways, right? They're just their name's not on the book. So
it's like the movie. It's like the movie Ghost, when you're doing the clay pot and it's like the person inside of you and you're singing. And
we needed that. That's what we needed.
That song does have Unchained Melodies in it.
They're typing for you. Yeah. Yes. The Doobie Brothers are playing in the background. No, okay. So here's a strategy that I heard a few years back in podcasting. This is one of the advantages of being in the space for as long as I have. And I've been applying this to some of my podcast coaching clients that are launching books. We do what I call a workshop week. So if you have like 5 pillars of the book, or the 3, like bench post, like, quotable categories or whatever, instead of doing 1 episode of your show per week, you would do 5 mini episodes covering one of the pillars. And then if you want to kind of layer on top of it, you go live on your social media platform of choice to answer questions about that pillar. And the whole time you're referring back to the book the whole time. And if you're going to go next level, you either bring on like a coaching client or somebody that that has applied that concept, and you interview them on Instagram Live or whatever to be like, and they are applying this in real life, and you can do it too. Get our book. So like a little workshop week like that. That's for those of you that are aspiring authors out there, something to think about. So
cool. Love it.
Yeah.
Thanks for the tip. We'll implement that tomorrow.
Hot tip. Okay. So we've got your website here at the bottom, tandemconsulting.co. Where do you guys hang out on social media? Where, if people want to reach out, I got a ton of podcasters listening. I'm sure there are people going, I want to book them for an interview on my damn show. So where do people reach out? Where do they connect? How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah.
LinkedIn, it's a great place. Otherwise, we're very active there, where we check our messages personally most of the time, right? We have a little bit of support, but it's pretty much on us, and we try to keep it pretty organic there. And otherwise,
Instagram, tandem.consulting.
Yep. We're there. And then go to the website, and you can actually just email us there. Just hello@tandemconsulting.co, I think. Something like that. It's on there. Yeah.
Perfect. And if you guys are checking out the live video, you've got the button there at the bottom there, the tandemconsulting.co. All right, you guys, this flew by. We talked about a broad swath of things here today. But I'm really psyched for your book. I think it's going to help people. I love, like I said, it's curriculum. It is a resource that I know that I'm going to be able to refer a lot of people to, just because it's what they need to hear. It's absolutely what they need to hear. And you're the experts that are in the trenches. You've come out the other side, and now you're teaching. And that's how it should be. Like we talked about earlier. It's not like we're thinking about starting a side hustle, so let's write a book about side hustle success. Not the case at all. So you're experts in your space, and you're giving back. You have run the race. Now you're reaching back over the wall, and you're pulling people over. And all right, who's next? All right, who's next? I love that about what you're doing. So I appreciate you. I know that you could be spending time in a lot of different platforms right now. So I appreciate you spending some time here with us here today on Podcasting Business School.
Hey, thanks for having us on, and congrats on your success. Yeah. And thanks for the advice here and there throughout our talk. So looking forward to keeping our relationship going, man. Appreciate it.
Of course. All right, Pod Pals, we've given you a lot to think about here today with this episode. If you're thinking about a side hustle, if you're thinking about turning your podcast into a full-time hustle eventually, this may be worth another listen. And go back through, check out the book, tandemconsulting.co. Go get it and get plugged into the information. And as always, I'm going to send you out into the world wishing you health, happiness, and many downloads. We'll see you on the next episode.